Hello everyone, welcome back. So in the last lesson, we have added the body content of this My Account page, so that when we click on different tabs, it has different forms pop up. But what we have done so far is just pretty much static content, right? Like this index page and the My Account page, they're all static. So that's the way you usually do stuff. You first try to develop the static pages, and then you try to replace that with whatever real content in it. So let's just do that on the back end this lesson. So there are several things we need to do on the back end side. The first thing is we're gonna need to add a domain model. So right click on your bookstore folder. We're gonna create a new folder called domain, and we'll add several stuff here. The first one we're gonna add is, of course, will be user, because no matter what you do, you're gonna need a user, right? So we're gonna call this one as user, and the user usually has some very basic information like user ID, which will be a long type, and username, password, first name, last name, email, phone number if needed, a boolean type showing whether it's enabled or not. Default it will be true. So these are the basic attributes of a user. And then what we can do is we're gonna use this user to add it into our database. And in order to put it into database, we need to add some ORM, persistent layer into our dependencies. And if you're not familiar with ORM, which is Object Relational Mapping, it's just basically, for example, we have database, right? And in database, we have relational tables. And within the memory, that is the Java system, we have objects, and they should be mapped to each other in some way. Usually, it's one object is corresponding to a table, okay? So in order to do some conversion between the two, we need to have a layer in between. They usually call it the mapping layer or ORM tool. So the ORM tool that we have right now, the most popular one is Hibernate, which follows the JPA's specification, okay? If you are interested in this topic, I have a more well-explained lesson in my Build an E-commerce with Java and Spring Framework. That course, there's one or two lessons explaining that. Basically, it's just a persistent layer in between, okay? And we need to add those dependencies. So let's just open our pom.xml file and go to pom.xml content. We'll be adding two dependencies. The first one is org.springframework.root, and the artifact ID would be spring root starter JDBC. And the second dependency is JPA. JPA is the Java persistent spec to define how do you actually persist objects into database. It's just a specification, not a concrete implement. And Hibernate actually is the concrete implement, okay? And as long as we have specified JPA, Hibernate will be added by default from Spring Boot. Alright, so it looks like there's some spelling mistake. Dependency. Oh, actually, this one should be data-JPA. Okay, and then we're gonna have another dependency added. This one would be MySQL, and we're gonna use MySQL as the database. MySQL connector -java. Okay. So knowing about SQL statement is very important for developers. If you are going for interview, I've never seen a situation that you will not be asked about the SQL questions. A lot of times it involves like joining tables and relatively complicated statements. So I have a course about this practice for specifically practical problems about MySQL. You can check it out. I think it will be helpful. Okay. And then let's come back to our user. Let's finish up with first adding this entities annotation. So this annotation will help us to persist the user object into the database automatically. Okay. And second, we'll be adding some more annotations. Control-Shift-O to import those packages. And here we're going to choose a Java persistent entity and a Java persistence ID. Okay. And if you want to change the column name in the database, you can simply add this annotation. Say, for example, we're going to use the name as, well, I'll just say ID. And some more attribute like, is it going to be a loadable, which means can it be a null value? No, it can't be. Can it be updatable? Can we update that? No, we can't. Okay, so this is how you specify some column attributes like this. And we're gonna do the same thing for our email, and name would be email in this case. Okay. And after that, we're gonna define by generate some getters and setters. Let's see, it should be in the source, generate getters and setters. We're gonna check all of them and click on OK. Those getters and setters has been generated. All right. And the next thing we need to do is specify the configuration for the Hibernate to connect to our database. So the first one, let's say we're gonna have data source here, and we'll put this as comment. Oops, like that. And we're going to specify data source URL as JDBC MySQL / localhost 3306 bookstore. So this JDBC URL is basically saying that we're going to use the JDBC connection, and the database type is MySQL, and database will be hosted at localhost 3306. And 3306 is the default port for database hosting, and the database name is bookstore. Okay, and then we need to specify the username. We're going to specify as root and the password. Okay, so I'll leave this as blank. You can fill the password as you want. Also, this username, I wouldn't suggest use root, because you'll be have security issue, but you just replace with whatever you want. And after that, we're going to define some more attributes: test while idle and validation query. Okay, so this one should be like that. This is just for make sure the connection is still alive if it has been idle for a long time. This is usually needed in production. And after that, we're going to define more JPA related attributes. For example, we're going to show the statement, and we're going to define the Hibernate DDL auto as update. So this case, the Hibernate will help to create database. Create data table, not database. Database won't be created by Hibernate. Okay, you have to manually create. But Hibernate will help to create a table if those tables are not existed. But if those tables have already been created, it will just directly update those tables. Okay. And we're gonna do properties .hibernate .dialect. We're gonna specify the dialect as Hibernate dialect MySQL 5 dialect. Okay. And then I'm gonna add some comments here. I'll just copy and paste instead of typing to save some time. Okay. All right. Let me change the name of this bookstore to bookstore database. And then we need to create this database in our MySQL environment. So I'm going to just use the MySQL workbench as the tool for MySQL. You can use whatever you like. If you're using Windows, you can use MySQL workbench. If you're using Mac or Linux, I suggest you can try out. There is one called SQL Pro, which is a free tool to use, but it's only for Mac, and it's pretty convenient and powerful to use. Okay. And now let's create a database. So here's the GUI of the MySQL workbench. We're gonna create a new schema called bookstore database, and click on apply. So this will show up the SQL statement. We're gonna just say apply and finish. As you can see, we have the bookstore database created, but right now it just doesn't have anything in it. All right. And let's make it as default so that this database is active right now. And we're gonna start a server from the backend. And this should help us to create the table of the user entity. All right, there's something wrong with it. Okay, access denied. Okay, I didn't input the correct path. Let's run again. Just run from here. Bookstore, run as Spring Boot app. So right now it's running. As you can see, the Hibernate is going on, and there's some table, say table not found user. So running this schema update automatically. And if we come back to our database and refresh database, as you can see, we have the table generated. If we select the rows from them, as you can see, we have the corresponding user attributes displayed in the table, okay? Which should be the same as in this entity we have defined. All right, so that looks good. We have added the user entity, and we have added the Hibernate, JPA, and MySQL connection into our system as well. And we have successfully persisted our first entity into the database. So as you can see, using Spring Boot and all those configurations will become very simple. Otherwise, if you do it in Spring MVC, it would be pretty, tedious and very long to do that. All right, so that's pretty much for this lesson. We'll continue in the next one. See you guys in the next video. Bye.